text 17. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Canto 9, Chapter 21, entitled The Dynasty of Bharata, text 17. So I'll read the Sanskrit, translation and purport. Ishvara lambanam chittam kulvato nanyaradasa maya gunamayi rajan swapnavat pratyaliyata. Translation. O Maharaj Parikshit, because King Rantidev was a pure devotee, always Krishna conscious and free from all material desires, the Lord's illusory energy, Maya, could not exhibit herself before him. On the contrary, for him, Maya entirely vanished, exactly like a dream. Purport. As it is said, Krishna Surya Sam Maya Haya Andakar, Yahan Krishna Tahan Nahi Mayara Adhikar. Just as there is no chance that darkness can exist in the sunshine, in a pure Krishna conscious person, there can be no existence of Maya. The Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Hyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mam Eva Ye Prapadyante Mayam Etam Tarantite. This divine energy mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. If one wants to be free from the influence of Maya, the illusory energy, one must become Krishna conscious and always keep Krishna prominent within the core of his heart. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord advises that one always think of him. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. In this way, by always being Krishna-minded or Krishna conscious, one can surpass the influence of Maya, Mayam etam tarantite. Because Rantidev was Krishna conscious, he was not under the influence of the illusory energy. The word swapnavat is significant in this connection, because in the material world, the mind is absorbed in materialistic activities. When one is asleep, many contradictory activities appear in one's dreams. When one awakens, however, these activities automatically merge into the mind. Similarly, as long as one is under the influence of the material energy, he makes many plans and schemes. But when one is Krishna conscious, such dream-like plans automatically disappear. Omukyantimarandasya gyananjana shalakaya chakshurun militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatan Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Cha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinobandhu Jagatpate Upisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu bheva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasade Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So beg for the blessings of the assembled devotees. Adi Purush Prabhu asks for your blessings. We can say something, share something for the pleasure of Shri Shri Radha Mulidhar, Shri Gaur Chandra. May our words be aligned with Guru Parampara, and may all the devotees be benefited. So Canto 9, Chapter 21, the Dynasty of Bharat, Text 17, just read it again. O Maharaj Parikshit, because King Rantidev was a pure devotee, always Krishna conscious and free from all material desires, the Lord's illusory energy, Maya, could not exhibit herself before him. On the contrary, for him, Maya entirely vanished, exactly like a dream. So in the dynasty of Bharat, there came a great devotee king named Rantidev. Rantidev was so glorious. Even the demigods in higher realms were aware of Rantidev and glorified him. So you can imagine this is a personality from the earth. But in higher realms, they knew of him. And he was a king, such a humble and devotional king we're hearing in this chapter. And his spoken words only comprise 2 verses from this chapter. And those 2 verses should be cherished by all devotees and deeply meditated upon. This is text 12 and 13, which we just covered in our morning Bhagavatam class. And Prabhupada says before he speaks these words, Rantidev, listen to this. Prabhupada says, by these words alone, King Rantidev can save the life of anyone who might hear them. Isn't that an amazing statement? It's like, we hear great words, instructions, and normally think, okay, I have to apply them, and then I get the fruit of it. I have to live that way. But here it's saying, if you just hear these words from Rantidev, the words themselves can save the life of anyone who hears those words. Save the life. And his story, we know he's fasting for a long time. He's fasting for 48 days with his family. And they're just about to have prasad together. And a brahmana comes and asks for prasad. So Rantidev, he divides it up, feeds the brahmana, also divides up the rest of the prasad to his family, and then he has a little portion for himself. So he's about to take from that little portion for himself after fasting for so long. And then a Shudra comes to his door. Do you have some food? I'm also very hungry. And Rantidev again divides it up, gives the Shudra the food, and then he just has a smaller little portion for himself, and he's just about to eat. And then a pack of dogs come, a pack of dogs and the dog master. And again, Rantidev gives all the food, gives all of his portion away to these dogs. And then the only thing left is a little 1 cup of water. And he's trembling at this point, fasting for so long. Just a little water will help him to survive, to sustain himself. And then comes a Chandala, which is a dog eater. Actually, the dog eater, if you look at this progression, right? Brahmana, Shudra, dogs, then dog eater. So the dog eater is put below the dogs. And that's because a human being can become less than an animal. An animal, in one sense, is not good or bad, or, it doesn't. The animal just is what it is. It can't really do wrong. It can't do what's right either. It just is what it is, A dog is a dog. That's the body. But a human being can actually go below what the animals are, because we have a choice, and we can sink so low. The human being can become like subhuman, and then animal, and then sub-animal even. So we might wonder why it goes from Brahmana, Shudra, dogs, to the dog eater. Yeah, that's possible. Human being has less restriction than an animal. An animal just has its instincts. So, right, wrong, good, bad, it doesn't apply. But a human being can sink so low that she becomes less than an animal. So anyway, so he has just this one cup of water. And this Chandala asks for it. And then Ranti Dev, by giving now this water, this one cup of water represents Ranti Dev's life. And he gives this cup of water away happily, gladly, gratefully. He gives it away. It says he gives it away and offers obeisances.
Everything here is like such a small deal, like hollow. We know like nothing.
Somebody's needs to be muted. So he gives away his life, and he saves the life. All right, as we were mentioning here, that Prabhupada says, anyone who just hears the words of Ranti Dev, their life is saved. So he actually saves the life of this Chandala and gives up his own life by giving this water to him. And he gives it away gratefully with obeisances. It's said by Jesus in the Bible that those who try to save their life will lose it. But those who lose their life for my sake will save it. That's amazing. So let's, these two verses, Prabhupada said, anyone who hears them, Ranti Dev will save your life too. So let's read them again, even though we've read them before. But these are the two verses, text 12 and 13. These are his words. So he's holding this water that he needs to drink to live. And then someone comes and asks for it. And then this is how he responds. I do not pray to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for the 8 perfections of mystic yoga, nor for salvation from repeated birth and death. I want only to stay among all the living entities and suffer all distresses on their behalf, so that they may be freed from suffering. And then text 13. By offering my water to maintain the life of this poor Chandala who is struggling to live, I have been freed from all hunger, thirst, fatigue, trembling of the body, moroseness, distress, lamentation, and illusion. So hearing these verses, these words, in the right state of consciousness, and Ranti Dev is actually saving us. This is like the amazing thing. This is the miracle taking place. Just by hearing, we're saved from what? Saved from what? He's saving the life of this Chandala, the physical life. But when a devotee hears these words, you're saved from repeated birth and death. There's a statement coming up, Ranti Dev Anuvartana. Actually, everybody who had a connection to Ranti Dev, everyone who followed Ranti Dev, means his children, his wife, his ministers, all the citizens, because Rantidev was leading and they were following, that he was saving everyone's life, saving their souls by his actions, by his words, by his behavior. And for us, just by hearing, he can save us. This is also confirmed in the Gita. Ati taranti eva mrityum shuddhi parayana. Shuddhi parayana. This verse in the 13th chapter says that one who just has the inclination to hear can be saved from death. One overcomes death. If you have the inclination to hear, and what you hear by hearing, one begins the worship of the Supreme Lord. That person can also be saved from death. So it's an amazing, just the inclination. So, we're all hearing somehow or other. We don't know how. By the mercy of devotees, we have this inclination. We like to hear this. We like to hear Bhagavatam. If we go deeper into that, if we cultivate that, if we're grateful to have that inclination, I don't know where it came from. It's not me. But the mercy of a devotee, we've come in contact, and now there's an inclination. The truth is beautiful. I want to hear more of it. I want to know the truth. If you have that in your heart, this is the process of overcoming death eventually. So these words of Rantidev, we should hear them again and again and cherish them. It's not exactly the words. The words are an expression of an energy from a higher frequency of life called love of God. So these verses, these two verses of Rantidev, it's like love of God in sound vibration. It's a higher frequency of life. We're not actually attuned to it. There's another dimension of life. It's very subtle. It's very pure. But the lower frequency of life, material consciousness, cannot perceive it, actually. We're in a state of consciousness that can't quite perceive the higher reality, but it's right there, actually. If we step back for a moment, the Bhagavatam describes creation, and it says that there's an unlimited spiritual sky. Just think about this for a moment. Unlimited spiritual sky. And in one small portion of that sky, a dark cloud forms. And that is called the Mahatattva. If a cloud, you think about it, the sky is very subtle. You can't really see it. It's space, right? But a cloud forms. Now the cloud is more dense. Now the cloud can be seen. It is more gross. It is more dense. So there's this Mahatattva, this dark cloud. And all of the material creation is within that dark cloud. And you can't perceive what's outside of it. When you're in it, when you're in that cloud, you can't perceive what's outside of it. So now that's the truth on the macro level, but it's also the truth on the micro level. The Mahatattva is also within each living being. The Mahatattva, what form is that? So the Mahatattva within each person is called what? The false ego. It is also like a dark cloud. So I have my own personal dark cloud as well. Just like the whole material creation is within a dark cloud. But I have my own personal dark cloud. And I cannot also, I'm totally entrapped in it. I can't get beyond it. I can't think new thoughts, actually. I can't see or reach beyond my present state of consciousness. It is closed, just like the Mahatattva is closed off. It's just like a dark cloud. So my present state of consciousness is, I cannot reach beyond it. I cannot see beyond it. This is why Prabhupada so often says that we should not speculate. It's not that it's just unwise to speculate. It's actually impossible to realize God through speculation. It's impossible to see anything of the spirit by the method of speculation. And it's also prideful to speculate, because in that fallen, closed off state, I'm thinking, I'll decide, I'll figure it out. I think it's this. Prabhupada would say, I think it's this, perhaps, maybe. This is all speculation. This will not lead to a realization of God. It's a kind of pride to speculate. It's saying that I can figure this out. I know. And everyone's speculating. And all our decisions in life and all our conclusions about life, it's all pride. And what's humility? To say, I actually have no idea. I see so little. Okay, I make my little decisions throughout the day. You have to weigh things and discriminate a little bit. But even that, this looks right to me, but who knows? Because that may lead to something else. It may be worse than before. But we're quick to make conclusions and decisions. Anyway, our present state of consciousness cannot perceive spirit, cannot perceive Krishna, cannot go beyond itself. Yet there's something called faith. Very mysterious. What is faith? It's to know without knowing how you know. So faith is knowing. It's a kind of knowing also. It's not a hoping. It's knowing something, but you don't know how you know. Right? When we hear spiritual truth, something in us says, yes. I know that's true. I don't know how I know that it's true, but I know that it's true. I can't really prove it to anybody. You can't prove it, but it's something felt. It's something known within. We want to move towards it. We begin to sense it. We begin to feel it. This is faith. We begin to feel the truth of it. But it's very hard to share that with another, to express it with another. We can't prove it in some material way. People are arguing over, they get into the history of religion and try to find some facts that give them proof that it actually happened. Did Jesus actually even exist? The history, did Krishna was he really on the earth? But that method will never work. What do we expect to find that way? Is there going to be some photograph of Jesus? Even that can be doubted. Someone will say, obviously it was made up or whatever. You can't get proof that way. But by the blessings of a devotee, we start to feel the truth of the words of the Bhagavatam. We hear that verse from Ranti Dev, and we think, oh, it's so beautiful, so true. How do I live that longing? How do I move towards that consciousness? And that's faith inside of us, waking up. It's drawing us to the truth. It's drawing us. It's something in us we're getting pulled by it. And we sense it, we feel it, and then finally, one can actually live in it by something called surrender. Prabhupada points out in the purport here. It's by this surrendering of the self to the Lord. Then one comes under another energy, and one is living in that state of faith. It is not just now we're not just feeling it or hoping it, but you're actually in it. And that's Ranti Dev here. Right? Look at this verse. Ishvara lambanam chitam, because his mind is totally absorbed in the Supreme Lord. And then what happens as a natural consequence? Maya swapnavat pratyaliyata. He saw material life. He saw his own material consciousness as a dream. He saw that. Right? Can't we sometimes feel that all of this is dreamlike in this material world? Things are happening, people are getting so excited, so involved, so absorbed, so fearful. And if you really step back we can feel sometimes this is not the ultimate reality. People are actually overreacting to things. It's like a dream. Bhagavatam, all spiritual literature always points to this material world as a dream, the analogy of a dream. But we know that when we wake up in the morning from a dream at night, then there's some relief. Oh, that was just a dream, right? You ever have that experience? You wake up, oh, thank God that was a dream. So in the same way, when a person wakes up spiritually and they see this material creation, all the happenings of the material world, they say, ah, it's just a dream. So the same principle, when you wake up, you realize the dream. When you're in the dream, you may not realize the dream. But as soon as you awaken, then you can see, ah, that was a dream. So Rantidev, as he wakes up fully spiritually, it's clear by his words, by his consciousness, that he is fully awakened spiritually. Then Maya and the material world, and he sees it all just like a dream. So the spiritual journey that we're on, it has, different stages. And for most of the people in this world, it's just full identification with this dream, full absorption in it. And we think this is the only reality. This is me, this body, my mind, this is me. And from my view of things, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, from my view, which is a closed off view from the truth. And then Prabhupada says in the purport, then we have my plans, we keep making my plans, my schemes. So one stage is just total identification in the dream, full absorption, nothing else. But there are devotees in this dreamlike world, and they're awake, and they're trying to wake up others, and they're giving a message. And they're giving that message that you're actually in this dream. Right? Lord Chaitanya would say, Jeev Jago, you wake up, that soul needs to wake up. And then when one wakens a little, you start to see what everyone is saying, what's good and what's bad in this world. The devotee begins to see that both of those two, good and bad, are imposters. Both of the two of this is right, this is wrong, those are both imposters. And now I'm safe in this world, now I'm not safe. A devotee sees both of those conclusions are imposters. So if we should wonder then, if I'm in this dream, it's not the ultimate reality, it's like a dream. What do I do that keeps feeding this dream? What keeps me in this dream? That should be our question. It's a nice verse from the 3rd canto I wanted to read. This is 3rd canto, 27th chapter, text 4. Again, the Bhagavatam, everywhere you'll find this analogy of the dream and awakening from the dream. And in all scriptures of the world you find it. So here's a verse also. Actually, a living entity is transcendental to material existence, but because of his mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease, and just as in a dream, he is affected by all sorts of disadvantages. So what is it that sustains this dream? This verse is very clearly pointing out that I'm the owner of things. I'm the controller of things. This consciousness keeps the dream going. I'm the knower of things. I'm the doer. I'm the enjoyer. This is contained when Prabhupada says lording it over material nature. We have to see how it's actually many things he means by that word. All this tendency of lording over. We might think, well, that's not my personality. I'm not just like going around lording over people. But even just to think, I know what's right. You know, like we said before, speculation is a kind of lording it over too. I know. I'll figure it out. I can see what truth is and what it's not. I can see what's best here. I can see what's best in general. This is also the tendency to lord over. So, and then the owner, I'm the owner of things, the things around me, the people, the controller, the proprietor. I'm the doer. I can do. It's my power. I decide to do this. I can do that. But all of these abilities are also not my own. I didn't create them. Now, if we stop, you know, this tendency that I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer, then it can sometimes be fearful for us, because isn't that the spice of life? You know, that imagine you take away from a person, it's revealed to them suddenly that they're not the doer, they're not the controller, they're not the owner of anything, they're not the proprietor, they're not the knower. Imagine suddenly you take that all away from a person. What do you have? It's like you're living off those ideas, and it keeps you alive, and then suddenly those are taken away, and one feels very empty, powerless. This is real fasting, you know. Ranti Dave here, we're hearing about his fasting. We need to fast from these attitudes that I'm the enjoyer, controller. So that consciousness is a little uncomfortable. Like when you have an attachment and you try to let it go, it gets uncomfortable. We actually start to crave for it more at first. But if we can persevere in that, if we can persevere and just continue with some service, continue in realizing that, you know, this is the actual truth. There is this emptiness. I never realized the emptiness because I'm always filling myself up with something, some new excitement. We all have our go-to, some place that we go to kind of get filled back up. What if you were to stop all those things? You're going to start to feel empty. But you persevere. Now you take that consciousness, you take shelter of the Lord's devotees, you take shelter of the truth, you take shelter of your chanting, take shelter of service. And then in that state, which is a little uncomfortable, a little empty, but is realizing more one's dependence. In that state, when you hear the truth, because the truth is now landing on something more real, then you'll get realizations of it. You'll realize the truth, because now it's landing on something within you that's more real. You see, it's like the truth, the scripture, the truth is perfect. But if it lands on my false personality, my conditioning, then what do I do with that truth? I interpret it. I either accept, I take it or leave it. Oh, I think it means this. And in that way, we're not getting it. It's not actually entering into us. But if you're in a state of realizing that I don't know, actually, and one is in touch that all these things I thought were real and important for me are kind of dreamlike, and now I have nothing. There's a kind of emptiness. Now, when you hear the truth and it falls on that consciousness, then you'll start to get understanding, true understanding. Because you're admitting, I don't know, and you're open, but I need to know. Krishna, please reveal it. Show me the truth. And then there's another stage too, because when you're actually in your true identity, that I'm the eternal servant of Krishna, if you're really in that identity, and then you hear the truth, and you're in that truth of your true identity, then what happens? Then when you hear the truth, everything you're hearing is awakening this spontaneous desire to serve the Lord. One just wants more and more service. when it becomes eager for more service. So, but on this journey, the false personality, it's going to start to ache for its former pleasures, some reputation or some pleasure. We want to let go of that a little bit, but it's going to ache for it. We're going to yearn for some excitements, our former excitements, to be, filled up again. But we have to try to resist that. Queen Kunti says this nice verse, this famous verse. My Lord, your lordship can easily be approached, but only by those who are materially exhausted. One who is on the path of material progress, trying to improve himself with respectable parentage, great opulence, high education, bodily beauty, they cannot approach you with sincere feeling. You see, so all of these things, beauty, beautiful things, knowledge, we fill ourselves up with knowledge. We want to fill ourselves up with knowledge. So many so many forms of knowledge. Wealth, respect, reputation, it's all filling up the false ego. It's all filling up the false ego. And then one cannot chant with sincerity so long you're filled up. You see, but if we don't fill up, then we start to feel a little empty, a little dependent, more dependent. That's where we're meant to be in that state. And then you chant, and you can chant with sincere feeling. So we have to resist a little bit. And then we'll see a change takes place within us. One more verse I wanted to read, because it gives the perfect attitude in facing life, facing everything in life. This is another famous verse, of course, from Lord Brahma. From the 10th canto, 14th chapter, text 8. So we know this verse, but this verse really gives us the attitude of how to live, how to respond to anything that comes in our life. This is the verse, in my humble opinion. At least I'm taking shelter of it in this way. So Lord Brahma says, my dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him. You see, if we're filled up with sense gratification and all my desires, you can't earnestly wait. You're already filled up. But if we resist a little bit, then we're a little empty. Then we start to wait in the right way. But not impatiently. We're waiting with a kind of expectation for that mercy. My dear Lord, one who earnestly waits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So look at this verse very carefully. Everything is there that you need to do when something happens in life. Well, we have to patiently endure whatever is coming without reaching out for some quick excitement or pleasure. Just endure the pain. Endure the suffering. Actually, the word patience, you know what the word patience means? The word patience means to endure suffering. Patience, like we have passion, patience, and both those words mean suffering, actually. So it's to endure suffering in a noble way, nobly, to go through it. Just go through it. Take it, relax into it. Don't run away from it. don't don't escape into some enjoyment that covers it. We get addicted to those things when we do that. But we'll feel, if you escape, if you don't face it and you escape somewhere else, what happens is then you'll feel guilty for not, on a deeper level of ourselves, we feel guilty for not having dealt with it. And then we need the thing we went to more. We need that shelter that we went to. Now we need it even in a stronger way. And then we go back to it. And then again, we feel guilty. And so you just have to endure through it. So this verse is saying, patiently suffering. And not in some resentful way either. Vidadan namaste, and offering obeisances to the Lord, gratefully going through all this. Someone's waiting for mercy. One is patiently suffering with a grateful heart, offering obeisances, speaking words that glorify the Lord, gratitude. See, if we keep returning to this verse again and again, whatever happens in life, this is how at least I'm thinking, whatever's happening in life, whatever's upon me right now, some difficulty comes, some challenge comes, okay, go back to this verse. Go back to this verse and look at it. What's here? Oh, this is, let me first of all endure. Let me go through what I have to go through, understanding that I've produced it. It's a karmic reaction. And thank you, Krishna, for this. I can't quite see why and how things are happening, and I admit that it is painful, but I know if I just go through it without escaping, you've brought me to this place, Krishna. You've brought me to this consciousness, to this place I'm in. And I'm grateful for that. You're leading me back to you. So when we keep returning to this consciousness, then what happens is one day we'll notice a difference in ourselves, that all those things we used to run to for pleasure, to get relief, they'll become less important. They'll start to fade a little bit. And then we'll see that the attraction to Krishna is growing in a kind of spontaneous way. Krishna is so wonderful, so beautiful. I want to hear more. I want to serve him more. That will start to come a little spontaneously. We don't even know it, where we could be in the middle of this great transformation. All those things before that we used to seek to get pleasure, they're losing a little taste for it. And then gratitude is coming more and more deeply into the heart. And then when you feel so grateful, when there's this spiritual gratitude in the heart, then you also want to respond to it, and you want to serve. Compassion, gratitude takes the form of compassion, service to others. And so Ranti Dev here, you can see again the ecstasy of these two verses, the ecstasy that he's in. Giving up this cup of water, which is giving up his life. He says, by offering my water to maintain the life of this poor Chandala who is struggling to live, I have been freed from all hunger, thirst, fatigue, trembling of the body, moroseness, distress, lamentation, and illusion. So what that means is by giving away, by this service, he's ecstatic. Why? Because actually by giving it away, he's being completely filled up with the mercy of the Lord. And all illusion is gone. And then again, we'll end here with today's verse. It was mentioned here by Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit, because King Rantidev was a pure devotee, always Krishna conscious and free from all material desires, the Lord's illusory energy, Maya, could not exhibit herself before him. On the contrary, for him, Maya entirely vanished, exactly like a dream. So wonderful section, Ranti Dev, meditate deeply in Ranti Dev. We should wonder, like, to speak these words, how did he get there? Such a consciousness. And I think we can see that he's free from material desires, and therefore he's seeing Maya, he's seeing the material world as like a dream. So that process, I was trying to explain in this class, the process of freeing ourselves from desires and what it actually takes. It does take some endurance, resisting going to those places we always go to fill ourselves back up. We're actually filling the false ego back up, and that sustains the dream. But if we start to resist that a little bit, trust you can do it. You can resist. Take one small thing, and just today, you don't have to make some lifelong vow right now, but just today, try one thing to kind of just let go of a little bit. See what happens. Trust Krishna. Patiently wait. Patiently endure it. Take a little shelter of hearing some truth. And then you'll see, because it's a little uncomfortable, then you'll chant with a little more feeling because of that discomfort. And you're opening yourself because we're meant to realize we're in a state of being uncomfortable, and we're in a state of dependence. But we will never realize we're in a state of dependence if we keep filling ourselves up with things, because then we feel like gods. As soon as you get all the sense gratification you want and everything is fulfilled, and then you feel like, it's fine. I'm fine. But there's a much deeper fine. There's a much deeper pleasure. There's an ecstasy awaiting us if we can go through the realization of our dependence, of our need. Krishna, you're my only maintainer, action. Krishna, you're the only protector. This is surrender to the Lord. So we'll stop here. Sorry, I went a little bit over, Prabhu. Any thoughts, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Wow. Yeah.
Hi, Gail.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Krishna.
One thing I was thinking was you had read something that Ranti Dev said that reminded me of Vasudev Dutt and Prahlad, where he seemed to want to take on the suffering of the whole world, right?
Yes, that was in the 12th verse where he says, I don't want liberation. I don't want mystic power. I just want to be around all living entities and suffer on their behalfs so that they get free from suffering. So you're right. It's completely aligned with Vasudev Dutt, with his prayer as well.
And just one question is, I know we're running out of time, but when would you say that this patient endurance turns into like the mode of ignorance?
Yeah, so, mode of ignorance means to avoid. So say some challenge comes into your life. So the mode of ignorance, you want to cover it. You want to avoid it. Patient endurance means like when something's inevitable, go through it. Okay, so perhaps something's not inevitable. Maybe there's something that you just have to figure out how to resolve. Like you get a toothache, you go to the dentist. You don't just patiently sit at home and suffer.
Right.
So we're not like seeking for it in that way. But when something just happens, something in life, some challenge comes, some anxiety is suddenly upon you, and there's not really just a quick way of solving it, you can sit still and just go through it. Allow yourself to feel that. And you're facing it because it has to kind of die away. So what we do is when there's that anxiousness or we go to something else to get a little relief. That's the mistake. We escape into something, and it just gives us, it gives us some pleasure, and then we forget about our anxiety. But actually there's an existential anxiety. There's an existential pain. And there needs to be part of us that sometimes just calms down, doesn't react, sits still, and let it go through. And it's a kind of dying of the false ego. So that's what I mean by patient endurance.
Oh, that's great clarification. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, Ghanashyam Prabhu.
There you go.
So much for such a lovely session, and I loved your answer to Gail's question. I wanted to take it back to the very beginning of the class where you pointed out the progression: Brahmanam, Sudra, dogs, then dog eater. And I'm just very curious. We see in the scripture, Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, it's always had dog eater, dog eater. If that's for a very specific reason, or when you had said humans can be below animals, so then are the dog eaters just supposed to be metaphorically representing anyone who eats meat, like animal eaters? Or if there's a specific reason, and why don't they say like cow eater then, or deer eater?
Yeah.
And if that's from Malecha as well. Thank you.
Yeah, even the idea is that the dog is a lower animal, compared to animals. Everything has like levels, and so by specifically saying like, dog eater, it's like, yeah, eating any animal we know is a heavy, it's actually a heavy birth, to be born in a situation where that's very natural, just to eat animals, is a low birth. A very elevated soul will have a certain sensitivity and compassion, and their parents have that compassion. You're born in a situation where that's not done. It's a more elevated understanding of life, the sacredness of life. So to be born in a situation where, yeah, we all just eat meat, and then there's different kinds of meat, and there are also sacrifices that can be done in Vedic literature where you're permitted to eat certain meat with certain mantras that are chanted. But to eat the dog is considered to be, it's kind of outside of that whole, even the Vedic range, of which permits sometimes the eating of meat, in certain circumstances. It's like outside of that even. It's like, anything. You see something in the street, you just capture it and, cook it or eat it. So that's considered lower. So yeah, but the dog eater is usually a kind of symbol of just a very low birth. And of course, someone can be vegetarian and still be very low in their consciousness and their activities and so forth. So we could take the dog eater in a sense of just someone who's gone even below the level of animal. And they could be just violent, more, animals often don't just kill each other, the same species, like another species will eat one species will eat another and so forth. But usually like the animals aren't just attacking and killing each other all day. But human beings do that, so in one sense we've fallen lower than the animals in this just violent killing of each other, in certain situations where that's just totally unnecessary, but we do it. That's lower than what the animals do. It's below an animal. So in that way, all of this is kind of below the animal level for a human being.
Thank you
Anyone
so
else?
much. Oh, could I ask a quick follow-up? Then I'm curious so is Malecha higher still than a dog eater? Like dog eater, what I'm getting from your explanation is not just animal eater, but just like really the low of the low of the low, like no sensitivity and even like consciousness of what you're eating.
Maybe even an onion eater or garlic eater.
Onion eater, garlic eater. Yeah, the Mlechas and Chandalas, they're usually like kind of all linked together. So I don't know exactly the distinction, but it's all kind of a similar category. So which is a little worse than the other, I'm not sure.
Thank you so much.
Ghanashyam Prabhu, can I quickly ask one last question?
Yes, Prabhu.
We were discussing yesterday this verse, self-preservation verse. It goes, life desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. And then today you quoted this wonderful verse, the patiently waiting. Oh, no. You quoted Queen Kunti. And
Yes.
She says that unless one is materially exhausted, he cannot sincerely approach the Lord. So how do we reconcile those two verses? Are we striving for a healthy life, or are we striving for material exhaustion?
Yeah, so materially exhausted doesn't mean, it's a realization. You're not depriving yourself now from food and certain basic necessities, right? So there are certain, we want a healthy life, a simple life, basically. We want to live simply. It's not that. So to have material exhaustion, don't take it as like, physical. I'm physically now exhausted and just downtrodden. But it's more of a realization that comes that, oh, there's actually nothing here to truly satisfy my soul. So let me just go on with my life, go on with my duties. I have responsibilities, I have my work, I have my family. Let me take what's simple. Some food is coming. Oh, that's good. Maybe I'm offered some food I don't like. I'll take it. Some prasadam. It's not my favorite kind of prasadam, but it's, like this. So a kind of like simplicity with things. Just an appreciation, and you take care of your health, get a little exercise, take a walk, take a little jog, keep yourself nice. This body is also meant to be used in service. We want to keep it in good shape and so forth. And so these concerns are there. This is a healthy life. And then material exhaustion is just a kind of realization that I'm no longer going to all these material things for the shelter that I need. I'm no longer escaping into them. I see now it's not going to do it for me. So rather than increase and become intoxicated into all of that, I'm going to reduce, actually. I'm going to reduce, take what's just, necessary for me in that way. So we want to move towards that. That's a process. We don't just, if you drop everything all at once, it may be a little difficult, but at least we should be looking at this truth. It's said everywhere like that. So this is the truth. Let's just admit it. It's the truth. And let's take our time with trying to move there, not judging yourself when you fail. If you fail, sometimes that's okay. If you go, we have strong habits, we go back to them. But stay in the truth, that this is the truth. I do want to overcome this. I'm not going to feel terrible guilt. But it's something I do want to overcome. And then gradually like this, we start to reduce. And then we'll get a realization of this idea of material exhaustion. And you're no longer running after and playing that game and just grabbing and seeking. No, I can be peaceful without all that and take shelter of the Lord.
Thank you, Ghanashyam Prabhu. Wonderful clarification from my immature self. Thank you.
Nice question. Thank you for that.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
For contributing to this class. Thank you, Athena, for your intelligent questions. Gail, everyone. Ghanashyam Prabhu, thank you very much for coming on. It's so soothing to have you speak. It's amazing. It's Prabhupada speaking very clearly, Krishna consciously, very nicely. Thank you.
Ditto.
All right. Have a wonderful day, everyone.